Hello, everyone, and welcome to another inspiring episode of our 5 o'clock Tea Talk series, proudly hosted by Coach Magazine Global. We've now reached our 33rd episode, and today's guests bring both rich experience and grounded wisdom to our conversation. I'm your host, Seda Tekeci, editor-in-chief of Coach Magazine Global, life coach and passionate advocate for meaningful personal and professional transformation. Over the past 2.5 years, I've had the joy of hosting some of the most inspiring voices in the coaching world, thought leaders, pioneers, and deep thinkers whose work is shaping the future of how we grow and lead. As always, this space is an invitation to pause, reflect, and explore ideas that shape how we live, lead, and work. Today, we are joined by two remarkable guests from the United States, joining us from different coasts, Kristen Stone from the West and Yusra Safi from the East. Kristen is a builder, organizational architect, and a lifelong student of human consciousness, a path that has deepened her spiritual life and led her into modalities like family constellations as part of her own unfolding journey. Her work bridges three layers of collective development: the individual through her own personal development and the communities she nurtures, the group through a decade of operational leadership at startups and the broader collective, through studying the frameworks and future-oriented principles that help humanity continue its remarkable arc of growth. She's devoted to shaping organizations as living systems, places that expand autonomy, well-being, and collective awareness. Yusra is a social organizational psychology scholar at Teachers College, Columbia University, and systems practitioner working at the intersection of psychodynamics, systems thinking, and coaching. As both a practitioner and a researcher, she brings a deep sensitivity to hidden patterns and human complexity within organizations. With over 10 years of professional experience, she previously led youth development programs for 1,200 plus students at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. Her unique professional toolkit combines certifications in systems thinking, master's NLP practitioner training, organization and relationship systems coaching, and family constellations facilitation, alongside her ACC coaching credentials. As both practitioner and scholar, Yusra excels at uncovering hidden interconnections and untapped potential in individuals and organizations, guiding them toward more conscious, life-serving states. Fluent in Arabic and English, she brings a multicultural perspective to organizational transformation and leadership development. We also want to explicitly acknowledge and honor Yusra's choice not to be visually present on screen or on social media. In a world that often equates visibility with value, we are grateful for the reminder that wisdom does not require performance. We will talk about it shortly. Keep watching. I'm sure it's going to be a mind-blowing conversation. So welcome, Kristen and Yusra. How are you both today?
Hi, doing well today. We have a storm rolling through where I live, so just grounding into the and into the season and into the nature.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, Seda, I'm so happy to be here. I always admire your work, and you bring such presence, leadership, and mysticism to everything that you do. So I'm honored to be your guest today, and I've had the honor to go through the journey of your coaching program and being in the book tribe with you. So being with you in another avenue is such added value for me, and to be here alongside Kristen is such an honor. I always enjoy leading with her and creating with her.
Thank you so much. It's likewise. I've been having my lifetime experience with the book club. It's been 6 years, I think, almost 6 years, and I've learned a lot throughout this journey. And I am so eager, my audience, to learn from you today with this conversation. Okay, for the general audience who may not yet be familiar with constellation work, could you share what distinguishes family constellations from systemic or organizational constellations, and why this distinction matters when we look at organizations and leadership today?
So, for someone who's not familiar with what a constellation is, right? It's you first. I would say you have to see it to grasp it, right? describing it with words doesn't give it justice. But for the purpose of, contextualizing our conversation, I'll give a brief description. So a constellation is, you have obviously there has to be an urgency, an issue in the organizational system, or someone facing an issue in their life. So there has to be this sense of urgency where you want something is stuck, or something is an issue, or something is causing pain, and we want to look at the system that this person or this thing exists within to see where movements can happen to produce, to release, or to bring in more life for the individual and to the system. So it's originally it was Bert Hellinger is the person who first brought it to practice, but obviously he worked with Virginia Satir and others in developing his methods. But you have representatives or roles, what we call people come in and they are giving a role. Roles are sometimes revealed or not revealed, and the facilitator has an idea of what they are constellating in service of the client, and having these roles, and then the people representing these roles will start getting information, emotions, even physical sensations that are not theirs. And we then observe and see how the movement evolves. And then the facilitator can see maybe where intervention is needed, or just let it be in a trust that the field is a big aspect of constellation work, holding the constellation. And some constellations provide information and they stop at that, and some constellations provide some sort of resolution, and it's up to the client to see, to learn, and then feel the movement and move forward from that. So it's a way in which we can reveal hidden dynamics, or not necessarily hidden, but also reveal dynamics in a way that is more tangible and more observable, for the purposes of soul movements and bringing more life into systems. So how it differs is, in family systems, you have the family soul, or what they call the family conscience, right? So it's everyone exists, and from that family exists in that family. The parents, the grandparents, their parents, and their parents, and their parents. And also partners, ex-partners, people who help them, maybe people who hurt them. So a family system has existed for many, many, many years, and has all these energies and souls as part of it. So when we do family constellations, you have a representative for the mother, you have a representative for the father, for the grandparents, for the siblings, and then you see what comes through for the individual. And you might sometimes see in the mother, she's the role, the representative is representing the role of the mother, but also other maybe the grandmother, or some other souls or energies from the system can come through the constellation, and through the role of the mother to the constellation. So this is family constellations. It's very set up, right? And then if someone is looking at the ground, there's probably a dead person. You add in a dead person on the ground. So there is a very set, not set, but it's a very structured way and of doing family constellations, and it works. Organizational constellations, you're obviously, an organization would have existed maybe for 5 years or 10 years, and organizations do cease to exist, right? They can end. And people, the rules of belonging in organizations are different. Someone can get fired and they're no or resign and they're no longer part of the system. But in family systems, no one gets fired, right? They're always part of the system. So in organizational constellations, the rules of, or what Bert Hellinger calls the orders of love are different. And what I've seen with organizational constellations, usually the purpose is to collect information, to see what is happening, to see where the intervention could happen. I've seen it somewhere where there is a movement towards a movement towards a resolution, but it not in the same way that it happens in family constellations. And the quality of the field different. And I don't know how I can explain that. But Kristen, maybe you want to add to that.
That was beautiful. Yusra, wow. Yeah, for any of the listeners who've never really heard of or been exposed to constellations, that's a great place to start. But as Yusra said, and I'll echo that, it's like trying to describe a car if you've never seen it. You know, you would be like, what? Four wheels and then a box on top of? You'd be like, this makes no sense. Because there's so many components that make up a car, which we all have, language and words for. And so similarly, I would say constellations can be challenging if you've never seen them because, there are certain words for the roles and for the client. And so I would highly recommend definitely like looking it up or going to a constellation, and I'm sure we can share some resources in that regards, in that
Yes.
regard. And then, yeah, I'm not sure, Yusra, that I have more to add. I think you did a really beautiful job, and it's there's so many ways to do a constellation. There's so much that you feel when it's happening that and you experience in whatever position you're participating in that constellation from, that it has quite a different flavor than most of our day-to-day lives. And I think that's probably worth putting a seed in people's hearts. If there is something interesting, or if you're someone who appreciates exploring new experiences, I would highly recommend finding a constellation to participate in.
Thank you for this beautiful introduction to the constellation. I hear there are few words stand out. One is the field, the other one is the experience. The first one probably is the issue, the topic of the person or the organization brings to the field. And then there is the facilitator, which should be very highly trained, not some person that comes from street, right? So yeah, this four concepts is the core concepts of the constellations, what I hear and experienced with you and with other facilitators. I never did it for myself. I was always the representative, and even the experience of being a representative is a very nice experience. I don't know how to describe it really. So both of you work at the intersection of inner transformation and collective systems. From your perspectives, how does personal consciousness work actually shape the health and behavior of organizations, and where do you most often see the disconnect?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. How does personal consciousness work actually shape the health and behavior of organizations? And where do you most often see the disconnect?
It's a great question. I'm happy to kick us off on it. I think there is much to be said, and any listener, any person can tap into that part where they have had a boss or a manager, or really just been in the presence of someone who they feel that they can trust because that person is grounded in themselves. So when I think about personal development and consciousness work, when we have leaders who are grounded in themselves and in both the grief of their life, but also the joy and possibility of their life, and can hold both truths at once, the people who they interact with have a much better experience. And similarly, I'm sure we all have examples in our lives engaging with people who haven't done that work, and the ways in which that ripples into our own being, like our own personhood, but also into those within our communities, right? And so, in so many ways, consciousness is this big lake where one ripple can affect the whole the whole consciousness in ways we can't always see. And so I think, as people have done consciousness work, it goes many directions because every person's on their own journey, but I do think that it can create a much more grounded organization, much more clear, and then the ripples into the rest of the world can be impactful in ways that we would consider positive, right?
Thank you, Kristen. And I would add to that is that, and I speak from personal experience, that the personal consciousness and development work, obviously it brings a higher level of self-awareness, right? And our own patterns, our own leadership style, our own blind spots. So when someone is constantly working on themselves and working within a team and an organization, I think their level of sensitivity to the system around them becomes higher. As they start developing the skill of noticing patterns within themselves, noticing blind spots within themselves, noticing triggers within themselves, they start observing it and can observe it in people around them, right? So that if the team is perceptive or the system around them is perceptive, they can bring that awareness that they've developed internally, externally, right? And they can help elevate the team if possible. And if they are in a leadership position, like Kristen said, then the impact is much, much bigger. And I think, Seda, your question is profound because I've always asked this: what shapes a leader? Is it their level of consciousness, their level of skill, their level of self-awareness? There's a lot of research on what a good leader should look like and be. Or is it the minute they're plugged into the system, they're sucked into certain roles and into the role and patterns of that role and the energy of that role, and then the system shapes them? And I've seen it both ways. I've seen leaders who come in and start transforming systems, and I've seen leaders who come, before they're hired, they have all these great ideas, but then once they take on the job, after 3 months, 6 months, they then start assimilating into the patterns of that system. They're sucked in group dynamics. It's called role suction. They're sucked into the energy of that role because the system has created patterns in that role, right? And then I think, it is the system who actually shaped them, how they are in the organization, not their own personal consciousness. But I would argue that if that person does the work and continues to develop themselves, then they can be aware of what they're sucked into and choose to transform it, shift it, and such and such. Yeah. So I've in my experience, when I worked at different places, I've noticed that, especially with NLP work, the more that I worked on it, the core level, the master's level, then I became very sensitive to what's around me, and I can notice things. And then I would bring it to my colleagues, and some of them, they would be receptive and they start shifting and noticing as well. But some were thinking that that some leaders were threatened by that. So I think that when someone starts this path, it's it does affect the group. Sometimes it's welcome and sometimes it's not. And then there are some decisions to be made.
It requires a lot of awareness and willingness to transform yourself. What I hear from what you said, yeah, if you are threatened by it, it's a lot of persistence, like, I don't want to change. What is this? What are you trying to do to us? But when you lean into, acceptance and awareness and flow, then the magic happens there, probably. In a recent constellation session that I was also part of, we witnessed something very simple yet profound. Unspoken suffering became lighter the moment it was seen. Movement softened what was frozen, and love emerged not by fixing or forcing, but by witnessing and staying. From your perspectives, what does this kind of moment tell us about how inner states like suffering, trust, love, or consciousness actually operate within human systems and organizations? And why does being seen matter so deeply when and where do organizations most often miss this essential human needs? This is a long question. Sorry, if you want me to go read it again, I can.
Again, it's a powerful question, Seda. Your questions are amazing. I can start off on this question. The movement of acknowledgement is a big one and is a core movement in constellation work. And acknowledgement is not an apology. It's not admission of guilt. It's not. Acknowledgement is simply saying, looking at someone and saying, I see you and I see what this has caused you, right? Like and I see the pain, I see the suffering, I see it's a movement of seeing, of presence. In constellation work, looking into the eyes of when you're doing this movement is critical. So it's presence, complete presence, and seeing the other and seeing what they've been through. And in this movement, the other person feels, again, it's something that is very hard to describe, and I'm sure words don't give it justice. But when you are the being acknowledged and fully seen, without judgment, without if there is something that relaxes, and there is a sense of like an inner battle or conflict that is instantly resolved, that it's okay. And I've seen this in constellation work, and Seda, you described beautifully your experience, and I've also seen it in in sessions with people, and I've seen it in organizations when a team just needs to be acknowledged for what they've done, or what's a certain organizational movement has caused them. They don't want to be victims. They're not complaining. They're not. And it's just about leadership sitting and saying, we acknowledge that the sudden shift we've made have caused you to repeat processes, lose time, or maybe turmoil in your team. And we acknowledge that what this has caused you this, and it just, in that movement, it's not about saying thank you or giving credit, while it might be needed, right? But it's about not brushing things under the rug and supposing that things will just move on without actually seeing and acknowledging. Yeah. Kristen, do you have something to?
Oh, I think that's well said. I'm appreciating the way in which you tied that back to organizations as well and to the clarity of it. And I will be careful not to make any way wrong. I know that none of us would do that, but yeah, we live in this world where so much doesn't get acknowledged. So much is like, well, we have to finish the next process, and I have to get the, within our own internal worlds, I have to go do the groceries, I have to clean the house, we have so many things. And then we put aside this acknowledgement of the experience so frequently. And well, that's not wrong because we're human and that's such an important part of life. It's also, to Yusra's explanation, it's so useful to take that moment and with complete presence say, wow, like, wow, I see that. And often that pain, sometimes just that person. And suddenly the whole tone shifts. And I think you go from, in the example of cleaning the house or doing the groceries, you go from like, I have to go get the groceries and I have to clean the house and I have to do all these things to like, oh, I get to go buy groceries today. Like I'm acknowledged for the challenge that the human life is, and I'm also capable, once I've seen it, to actually move into more presence with it. Which, as we discussed, the field, I think, is often the field is like this sense of immense presence. And it's one of the reasons this work can be so special because it brings you into that space in a world that doesn't have a lot of time for that acknowledgement.
Yeah, I can say that for the coaching sessions too. Any sessions that requires listening other person, it's profound to experience, in the moment, stay in that special moment together with that person and acknowledge what they are going through. Yeah, thank you. Beautiful. So, Kristen, you often speak about organizations as living systems, and you diagnose organizational life through psychodynamic and systemic lenses. How can we listen to what the whole of an organization has to say, and what is the value in that?
Oh, wow. What a nice question. And as with all of them, complex to answer. Um, so in part, when I consider organization as a living system, and I consider all things as a living system, the personhood, the family consciousness, they're always in movement, right?
Yeah.
And we often talk specifically through the work at NLP Marin about how most of our actions are an unworkable attempt to say, I love you. So you have a system and it's moving and it's trying to express love to each other. There are a few exceptions of like psychopaths or sociopaths, but let's leave them aside for now. So you have the system that's moving, as much pain as my parents have caused me, without doubt, they were always just trying to express love to me. And as many times as I tried to like meet them and I caused them pain as a child, I'm sure. My desire internally was to say, I love you. And so much of life gets caught up in this unworkable attempt to say, I love you. And the system continues to move, but with very little space to do so. And as you asked in the last question, when we acknowledge it, when we acknowledge the pain someone was caused, not trying to change, like we don't need to change it at first. There's nothing to do about it. We just say, wow. The system's like, oh my God, I was trying to say, I love you. And then it goes like, phew, and the whole thing moves in a completely new dynamic. And organizations can be quite the same way, right? It's often not about turning the whole thing over and like ripping it apart, and restarting from the beginning. Sometimes it's just about the smallest movement that can say, oh, like I see this, and then boom, it can shift and move. Um, and in that way, I think about many things as living systems. And what was the second half of the question?
How can we listen to what the whole of an organization has to say, and what is the value in that?
I actually think that every single person in the organization, as they grow, listens in a different way and they hear something different. So Yusra and I co-facilitate constellations, and in doing so, she hears and sees different things than what I hear and see. And if you ask how to do it, I mean, I think you start by listening to yourself and giving yourself that space and finding your rituals and routines for that listening, and then listening to the whole world gets easier. And ideally, you can find a tribe by which you're supported in your listening and you're seen in that, because it sort of continues to build momentum. And the value, I have no idea. I like to think the world gets a better place, but in my own heart, like my world gets calmer, more clear, more aligned with with the soul part of myself, and less aligned with the constant movement and the drama of the world that we can exist in.
Beautiful.
Anything to add, Yusra?
Yeah.
So, and thank you, Kristen. In systems thinking, there's this core concept is that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. Right. And as Kristen said, people in the organization can access it at different levels. So an organization is not HR and finance and procurement, and it's not the sum of the parts. It's not just also the products we provide, the services we provide. There is an organizational consciousness. There is a concept organizational life force, if we may. And the founders are always a good way, the intention for finding and why they found this company, right? Or if it's a startup or if it's founded by, I mean, government systems can be quite complex and organizations, but I've witnessed organizational constellations where the whole was giving us a space to speak. Someone was representing the voice of the whole. And for someone who's coming in with the urgency, with the issue, whether they're a VP or a CEO or whatever, that is very useful for them to hear. And as Kristen said, when you talk to different people, and I've experienced it in an organization, and I ask, what do you think our organization wants from us? People have different views, right? And you can have the vision and mission written clearly in the website, but the lived experience of the individual in the system, as parts of the system, they can access different parts of that consciousness and can speak to it. But I would say that the leaders should be very clear on, or like can have the sensitivity to access that. What is the whole trying to tell me? And it's beautifully portrayed in organizational constellations.
I like the concept of the organizations is not the sum of the parts. It's bigger than that. And the perspective of having different understandings of the visions and the missions by all the work, the employees in that organization brings a certain flavor into the whole mission and vision thing. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for that answer. And much of your work focuses on what operates beneath the surface, unspoken dynamics, inherited patterns, invisible loyalties. What invisible forces do leaders most underestimate? And what happens when those forces are finally acknowledged?
So I'll answer this question by giving an example.
Okay.
I witnessed a constellation, and it was part of a constellation, an organizational constellation in the Netherlands. And the person who brought in the issue or the urgency, he was a co-founder. And the organization did research to find cure or medication for rare genetic diseases. And it had funding from the families of the kids would donate. It had a VCs, a venture capitalist funding. It had different sources of funding, right? And we had the facilitator set up, someone for the founder, the co-founders, and then the vision of or the purpose of the company, and the families of the kids, and then the constellation started. One of the things that came through, one of the hidden patterns that came through, that the founder, one of the co-founders, was not aware of, is how much power the families have in the system. The families of the kids who donate the money. And because obviously they're donating because their kid has a rare genetic disease and they want to help them, right? And so there was no resolution in the system, right, in the constellation, but the co-founder got a lot of information he can work with, but it revealed hidden dynamics in how the system is operating. It revealed like the way someone is looking towards purpose. The representative for purpose in the constellation gave him a lot of information. So the hidden dynamics or the hidden patterns in a system are created for a good reason. They have, like we say in NLP, Marin, they have an intended positive outcome. Like nothing is created out of wanting to destroy something, right? But they were created to fix something in the system, like to work with something in the system, and revealing these dynamics in a system and bringing them to the surface and realizing what caused them. Then the people who are in leadership can say, okay, we can shift this in this way, or we need to acknowledge the families, or we need to maybe limit how much funding we receive from families, or whatever, so then they can have work with that. But the not being in tune or in touch or finding these patterns out, the organization can be, and we may have, I experienced this, like, why do we keep having the same issue in this team or in this department over and over again? And we're all smart, intelligent people who can figure things out and shift things, but the same thing keeps repeating. And this is when things get stuck or they're repetitive, and you're like, why is this? This is a moment where, like, okay, what is the hidden dynamic here? And also in systems thinking, feedback loops can come into, there are reinforcing feedback loops and stuff. So I'll I could see you want to say something, Kristen. Go ahead.
No, I'm just ready. I was, I don't have much to add. Did you finish your thought, Yusra?
Yeah. So what I mean is, similar to personal work, if you're not aware of what's moving you subconsciously and what's triggering you, and like you can go on autopilot your whole life. Like in organizations, if people don't reveal and work with and have the sensitivity to uncover these dynamics and shift them, then organizational change stays at the surface. And we've seen this happen so many times. Big projects, we're going to change everything, but then nothing really changes. The dynamics are still the same. So shifting the dynamics requires tapping into these hidden patterns for true transformation to come across.
Yeah. I don't have much to add. Wow. Go ahead.
What I hear is, it's like, looking at a big picture instead of looking bits and pieces, this piece here, this piece there. But also, while looking at the big picture, systemic thinking requires to zoom in one piece also and see from that perspective, understand and reveal whatever it is there to understand the whole picture. Is kind of complicated, but yet in the end, it's very helping process, what I understand.
Yeah. I mean, The question, what invisible forces do leaders underestimate? All of them, because they're invisible. That's like, you can't. It's so, I mean, in our own lives and in our own worlds, as well as in organizations, like we don't see them. And as Yusra pointed out at the beginning, we see the pain that they're caused.
Mm,
And then we choose to look at them or not. And both are completely fine outcomes. One just has more pain and a longer journey, I think, in
mm,
my own personal experience. And I've recently come to a place where it's just true that some forces will be invisible. That's the divine, and it's such a gift. The only way to have the divine is to believe in it before you can see it, right? That's
mm.
faith. And it's really an important part of being human for me. And I think they're invisible forces that are causing us pain because they're asking to be looked at. And how easy is that, to notice and to recognize? You go, okay, great. Like this thing caused me pain. Let's go see what's going on. And then there's a whole bunch of invisible forces that cause us joy every day we don't get to know about. And we don't really have to ask because they're just bringing us goodness and joy. So I think we underestimate all invisible forces, and it is the reason I love that in constellation work, because it can open our hearts to more of that invisibility and to more of that possibility.
I invite our audience to pause here and reflect on what just Kristen said. It would take a while to comprehend what she said.
You'll find it one way or another.
Okay, my other question. As systems grow more complex, traditional leadership models seem insufficient. What does mature leadership look like today from a consciousness and systems perspective? And what inner capacities must leaders develop to hold it? Well, you a little bit answered that question with the previous question, but would you like to add anything to that?
Am I allowed? I shouldn't curse on this podcast, so I won't. But like, how would I know? I am living in a world like all of the rest of the listeners that has AI moving things, that has like systems and invisible forces no one in the history of humanity has seen before. And truly invisible in this like incredibly unique way. My gosh, what will mature leadership look like? I don't know. What does leadership even look like? I don't know. But I do really, really like my heart warms at the amount of people coming into this work. And both of you on this call are such incredible examples of that. And we can have conversations about this now in ways that we never could before. And I think that's already the beginning of something new, but no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for the answer. Yusra?
I agree is I think that we are there. I mean, the body of work and research and books that have been written on leadership is huge, right? And then we think, how come with all of this, the world still lacks good leaders, right? And what I define as a good leader is someone who leaves the system more alive than they found it, right? And life means abundance. It's all the energy that comes with life, right? Like opportunity and possibility and abundance and compassion and connectedness and all of that, right? This is why and I think that with all of this we're at a point in time where like how come we don't have better leaders? And with the limited knowledge that I have and the limited experience that I have, I think a good leader is someone who works a lot on their presence. Like they can access the heart field and be present from there. Obviously, the intellectual field is important, but also they can access the heart field and have compassionate presence and curiosity and and say, okay, things are not working. Let me connect with this and see what's going on here. And this requires tremendous energy and stretching of the personal capacity for presence. But I don't think someone could do this without them be also doing this with themselves, self-awareness and self-inquiry and constant self and transformation, that they can bring that into the system again. And it is exhausting. In the instances that I've led, I was exhausted. It's not a, being present as a leader is exhausting, right? And being in tuned with the system, being in tuned with the people in the system, always stepping back and asking, why is this caused? How can I work with it? How can I, and this is one of my theories, is that the people who are actually equipped to lead realize the responsibility and the burden and the energy it requires. And people who don't are the ones who actually are like, oh, I want to lead. I want this position. But my theory is that maybe the model of one leader is because it requires so much energy, is no longer needed. Maybe we just need co-leaders, right? And so people can take rest. Present leaders can take rest and shift and say, can you please take this on? And while I, right? So this is, yeah. So in this day and age, I think you need to be, yeah. There's an example of the New Zealand Prime Minister. She stepped down because I believe she was a conscious present leader. And it just, it was too much for her. But then I ask we need to develop systems around leaders to support them. Okay. I can talk about this forever, Seda, but I will stop here.
Yes, Yusra, I love the concept of co-leading that you had the conversation, because I love the way that you lead the constellations with Kristen, the book club with Khawla, and we really need that. It's very important to have that kind of, relaxation when you don't feel like it. The other call it step into the field and take the charge in their hands. And I'm been doing this in Turkish book club by myself since 5 years, and I feel like I'm very tired right now. And I want just have a co-lead with me when I don't, feel like it, or when I'm sick. For the consistency, it is very important. And for the better quality, maybe better leading. But also, I think it starts with, instead of organizations, these clubs, these, groups, being a good leader is start with the individual itself. Like, you need to lead your own life first. You need to be connected with yourself first, be present with yourself first, then you can be a good leader for the other things. Most of the time people are lacking of this idea. Like, they think, I got this degrees, I got these skills, I can lead. Yeah, but are you connected to yourself first? You need to think about it. And the HR, the people who recruit these leaders, also has to think about this before everything else. So another important question, Yusra, you made a conscious choice not to be visually present on screen or social media, and we deeply respect that. In a world that often equates visibility with value, how do you both think about presence without performance, and what does this teach us about authenticity and impact?
Well, I'm the kind of person who would take a whole trip and not take a single photograph. I will not, so for me, it's always been, the quality of presence and how I choose, trusting that what I remember will remember, I will remember it, right? And I guess and I don't have a complete answer for you, so that's still a work in progress. I think that I don't want people to equate me to what I look like, right? Or remember me. What stays with them is the quality of the engagement and the quality of the connection. And they say, oh, when I met Yusra or spoke to her, this and this happened, right? Because, our minds are meaning-making machines. We see someone and we're like, oh, she's she looks this way, she looks this way, and she looks that. So the mind starts making stories, right? And there is a part of me. There is a poet. His name is Mahmoud Darwish, and he has this beautiful poem. And one verse always stays with me, and it resonates deeply, deeply with my soul for reasons that I know consciously, and there are many reasons that I know that I don't know, but I resonate with. It says, وأشهد أنني حي وحر حين أنسى. And I confess that I am alive and free when I'm forgotten. So I would like to be forgotten. So in that sense, I don't like to have presence online where, I do the work or the moment we connected, I'm forgotten. And in that sense, I stay, yeah, I'll stop here.
Okay. Would you like to add anything, Kristen? You have an idea of on this topic, like being, not present or being wanting to be present? What is it for you?
No, I think it's a complicated and complex web that we weave with what technology is today and with how our consciousness relates to sharing things and showing things all the time, and also the way that gets used against us, right? Like there's a lot of ways that can be used to hurt you.
Yeah.
People, AI video faking people, and it's there's never a right answer to much of being human, but I think that's a complex one.
Yeah. Denmark started a law about this. AI cannot use their citizens' videos, photos, or anything if they don't want to, I think all the states, all the countries has this kind of law enforcement for that matter. But I totally respect your choice, Yusra. In another perspective, the secrecy might, create a curiosity for people. Who is this Yusra Safi? How does she look like? Maybe in a way, but your perspective is that you don't care about the, outlook, and you just care more the inner work, the connection, the ideas, and all the systemic things that you are also already working in. Thank you for your answer. And my last question, looking ahead at organizations, education, and leadership, what gives you the most genuine hope about where human systems are evolving and what feels most urgent to relearn or let go of?
Oh, I'm
Wow,
not
Seda.
sure. Yeah, I know. Not sure there's a short answer to that. Oh,
Um, I think what gives me hope is the people. You, Kristen, many other individuals. I go to Colombia, so I see people there who are truly connected to making a change. And I, through our classes in NLP Marin, we've encountered many, many genuinely people who are really service oriented, and so I mean, it's there's so much that one individual can do, but I think it's in the connections, and I think that would be my answer, is that people who want to do good and serve need to connect with each other more, and support each other more.
yeah. I'm just sitting with that for a second. It's very similar, I think. Much of what we've talked about today has been on your internal journey. And for me personally, I'm learning that, of course, where we put our attention is what determines our reality. And as I put my attention on the incredibleness of the leaders that we have, or some aspects of them which are incredible, my world gets larger and larger. As I put my attention on the gifts that I have And I hope as the listeners can put their attention on the gifts that they have. And through that process, I acknowledge my pain. And as Yusra said, I share it with people I feel can hold it. And I lead with people I know who understand me as human and as learning and growing and as a living system as they are. And then I find out, and I encourage the listeners to find out what they would like. What would you like in this world? And to trust that they have what they need to get there, both in community and in themselves and in the gifts that are all around us, often difficult to see.
Wow. So, as we come toward the end of this conversation, what I'm taking away is a powerful reminder. Organizations are and have always been living systems to be listened to. It's happening in the world, and we need only to listen. Leadership is less about control and more about capacity, presence, maturity, and responsibility to what's larger than us. And that some of the most important work happens not where we look, but where we learn to see differently. Kirsten, Yusra, thank you for the depth, clarity, and quiet courage you brought into this space today. And thank you for reminding us that transformation doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it enters softly through awareness. Before we end, is there any last message you would like to add?
No, thank you. Thank you for the honor. Thank you for the beautiful questions. And thank you to all the listeners who are curious about the world.
Yes, thank you. These conversations are soul nourishing and soul unfulfilling. So thank you, Seda, for creating this space.
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank you.
grateful for you being here today and having this beautiful conversation with you, beautiful souls. And today we are recording this video on 17th of December, which is the anniversary of that of Rumi, which is celebrated as a wedding night in Turkey, because Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi thinks dying is connecting with the beloved one, and having the being free of the body and the soul connected to the higher self. And on a day like this, having this kind of conversation with you two beautiful ladies is a bless for me. Thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you for being with us. Until our next 5 o'clock tea talk, may you listen a little more closely to the systems you are part of at work, in your communities, and within yourself. And I would like to encourage our audience to hit the subscribe button on our channel for more insightful sessions. Don't miss out on this captivating 5 o'clock tea talk. Hit the ring button and remember to subscribe for more great content. Visit www.thecoachmagazine.com and enjoy our quarterly magazines. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.